So I'm here this afternoon talking to Tom Hagler about his book on We Could Be Heroes by David Bowie. What inspired you to write this book, Tom? It's fantastic.
Oh, well, thank you. I think David Bowie is just the most, beyond his music, he's just so interesting in the fact that he got involved in so many areas of life and our culture, and he met so many people. So, you know, many years ago, I don't know, probably when the Next Day came out, you remember that? And we thought, my God, you're alive, and you know, and then this lovely song came out, and it was really moving. And so I started to do a bit more research on him. I've always liked him, and then found out that he'd met A and B and C and D's at Warhol, Dali, Burroughs, Lennon, all these, and I thought, wow, and John Lydon, and I thought, that's really interesting. I'm sure all these both, do they know about this? And these encounters were really entertaining. So I thought, these are moments in our cultural history, and they're fascinating stories. So the initial idea was a load of short stories, and then as I started to put them together in a sort of weirdly Bowie-esque way, you know, you take a piece of information, put them together, they seem to weirdly connect. And I thought, what makes it a bit different from a normal biography, you know? And I've stitched them together, sort of chronologically, sort of thematically, and hopefully this picture of Bowie emerges that's a bit different, like a mosaic, if you like.
The thematic thing does come across really well,
Yeah.
and the sort of post-it note nature of the whole thing of the random associations. It's an absolutely brilliant piece of work.
Good.
One of the things, of course, that does come out of it is that Bowie, he probably wouldn't have used these terms, but he turns out to be an excellent HR manager insofar as I mean he's had impeccable taste at selecting people to work with him, and he sought people out in order to learn from them, and he kind of took something from everyone. I mean, would you amplify a bit on that?
It is very interesting, isn't it? And I think the other thing is that the thing that reflects that is he tried almost everything. So throughout the 60s, he tried, you know, he was, you know, into musicals, he was into folk, he was into rock, he was heavy metal, you name it. Yeah, he was doing all this sort of stuff, and he would sort of land on it, suck out what he could for a while, take it all, and then move on. And I think it helped that he was just that bit older when he made it. You know, he was 25 probably, and he had this huge backdrop of trying everything. And he's once said to, I think it was ELO or something like that, you know, they came up to him in the early days, it's obvious you've got to make it. What do you need to make it? And he said, you know, you get the best musicians you can. You rehearse like crazy, you get to London, you get the greatest manager, right? But the best musicians you can is such a great advice for when you're forming a band. And that's what he always did. He'd always pull in people from strange walks and make sure they were the very best, and then trust them, I think. So a lot of the albums, his writing credits, they're always there, but I wonder, some of those songs, you know, maybe he's 20-30% Bowie. You know, Carlos Alomar may be the main inspiration, and John Lennon, Power and Fame, you know, but he allows them, these creative people, to breathe around him.
And that's actually in common with Prince, which we're not going to talk about, but Bowie went through a lot of musicians that sort of came and went. But like Prince, he must have sacked them really nicely because they worked with him again. And that is actually the other hallmark of someone who's immensely generous of spirit. And he comes out as a real humanist in this. Of course, there have been some sticky moments with people he never quite hit it off with.
Yeah.
And the story about Lou Reed, I think, is quite fascinating, about how he sort of nearly missed Lou Reed. I mean, do you want to give us a little bit about Lou Reed, one of my personal favourites?
Yeah, wearing the Transform t-shirt. I think Bowie was amazingly generous, and that's one of the things that I'm delighted that's come out, because I think when you spend so many years writing something, it's a biography about somebody else, it's almost like a love letter. So, you know, so many things surprised me about his generosity, especially as he sort of got older, and the time he had for these little bands that couldn't believe he was going to get involved with them. And I think Lou Reed is quite interesting, because when they met, the first time they met, I could not believe this. So they meet in a little eatery, very straight eatery in New York somewhere. And Lou Reed's not having the best of times, so much so he's told people he's retired from the music business and he's back home living with his parents, which is unbelievable for the most revolutionary rock band, that the singer of the most revolutionary rock band there ever was. He's back in the mid-late 20s. So anyway, they have this conversation, and Bowie saying, "Come on, you've got to go back. We can do this, that, that." And eventually, of course, they collaborate on Transformer. And at the time, I don't think Lou Reed was a huge fan of Transformer. I don't know why. Maybe he thought it's a bit too commercial or anything. But you listen to Transformer now. I mean, that is just such an astoundingly brilliant album. And I think that's what we were talking earlier about Bowie bringing in people. Mick Ronson doing a lot of the arrangements on the piano and strings. It just the perfect day. So on and so on.
And I remember you saying that Satellite of Love is almost a David Bowie arrangement, isn't it, really?
I feel, you think of that last thing, Satellite of Love, and all that sort of stuff, but even better than my version.
Really?
Yeah. You suddenly hear all that glam stuff, and you hear Bowie and Ronson, you hear it all. And you Walk on the Wild Side, this sort of... Bowie would do exactly the same thing. He'd come in with a very simple acoustic, almost folky thing. You can imagine Lou Reed saying, "I've got this song, Walk on the Wild Side." You go, "I like the chords. The lyrics are amazing. Let me just get my friend in Herbie, who's a really good jazz bassist." And you've suddenly cracked it. You've got one of the most iconic bass riffs on any song. And that is amazing, the way they bring these things to... Great, they've got the nugget, but they make it sing,
And Walk on the Wild Side is another example of one of Bowie's great skills, is that the art of simplicity, because it has simply this very simple brush sort of sticks drums with the bass and very little instrumentation apart from the sax.
Yeah.
But it's just as this hook and the lyric, to support the lyrics, which is great. So, one of the other things that comes out is Bowie has entertained people that you just wouldn't have expected him to do, from great jazz masters like Bing Crosby to right through. And on your radio show, I understand that even Tony Blair, who I know about Tony Blair, he was an ordinary kid that just liked rock music.
Yeah.
But he had a bit to say about David Bowie that rather seemed more important than the issues of the day.
Yeah, so I was talking to him about COVID. So he's got this institute, and they're focusing on COVID in Africa, and whether lockdown was appropriate there because they've got so many other health issues and a lack of money and everything. So we were talking about that. So we talked about that, and at the end I just said to him, "Oh, listen, are you a fan of David Bowie?" And he burst out laughing. And I said, "Because I've just written this book where I'm writing it with Tony Visconti." And then he interrupted me. He was so eager. He goes, Do you know, Tom? I've seen Ziggy not once but twice." And he was like this 13-year-old rock groupie going, "I've really I've still got the tickets done and all the rest of it." So it was really funny. He had a nice story of how he invited Bowie around to Chequers, and he was very impressed because Bowie, by that point, late 90s, was into his pomegranate juice and healthy living. So Blair was very impressed that somebody who had such a rock god reputation was doing that sort of thing. And he also, Blair as well, like everybody else, you forget that Bowie influenced not just musicians, but so many artists, so much of our reading taste. And so Blair was in a university band, and they were influenced by Ziggy Stardust. And when Blair used to come on and play to the college or whatever, Mark Ellen told me this because he was in the band. Mark Ellen, the writer, the rock writer, said Blair would put his foot on the monitor, point to the crowd and go, "Corpus Christi, let's rock." And it's Spinal Tap-ish, isn't it? But that's the future Prime Minister, even, and I love those things, Yeah. And that's why I think this weird way that I've tried to put it together just tries to somehow get a sense of his insane influence. Arguably, he is the most influential artist in any walk of art in the 20th century. I'm not saying he definitely is, but he's up there. You can make a case with, he's in the top 10 for sure. And how do you quantify that influence? It's almost impossible. Just about everybody you speak to in the world of culture over the last 50 years, they'll name him.
We need to get an economist in to measure this effectiveness, but we're not.
2.7 apparently.
2.7, I think, yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing about the book is what I call sex, drugs, and rock and roll. There's a lot of sex in it, and if you look at Albert Einstein, he was a bit of a naughty boy. I'm not trying to draw an economic graph of the relationship,
it's all relative,
creativity, and playing the field, but there is an awful lot of sex in there, quite a lot of drugs, and a bit of rock and roll actually.
Even that,
with Mick Jagger and so on. But I mean, he had a lot of girlfriends, didn't he?
You know, there's a story. It didn't make it in. He falls out with Morrissey, so there's quite a big thing on Morrissey with him. But Morrissey wrote a song called "The Last of the International Playboys," and he wanted to put Bowie on the cover. So, and I thought, really, you know, but yes, you suddenly think, I mean, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of partners. I mean, just and he's never hidden that, and that's just, you know, yes, it was sort of quite astounding. And then a lot of people who I had no idea about, who are very well known, you know, in the rock world. And again, you know, it's all quite open, but, you know, there was one with Ronnie Spector and stuff like that. I had no idea about that.
And he stepped quite close to the edge of nearly killing himself with drugs, which is a lesson for anyone out there. Don't do it, folks.
Yes.
So he had to dry out, and of course that's when he went to Berlin.
Yeah.
But then there is, of course, you know, he wasn't afraid to touch rock and roll because he was cool.
Yeah.
So, you know, the Mick Jagger story is quite interesting, really, and the Stones and all of that, of how he came to meet what you might consider to be traditional rockers. You know.
He loved the traditional stuff as well, and he was sort of, even somebody like, I couldn't believe this, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah, exactly.
He was friends with
Deep Purple.
No!
I had no idea that would be possible.
And that's what's interesting. So he falls out, say, later with John Lydon, or John Lydon falls out with him, one way or the other. Now, you sort of understand that, because the Sex Pistols can't afford to be seen, even with somebody like Bowie. You know, it's a rejection of a lot of things, but certainly the Beatles, oh my God, but Deep Purple. But Bowie, I don't know why, whether he just didn't care, but he really didn't flirt with enough. He actively engaged with it. And that is such a strength of character, because you think he must be obsessed by being cool, but he wasn't. You know, there's his plan to make an album with Lulu. There's his plan to write for David Cassidy an album. I mean, he just didn't care, anybody. And it comes back to what you're saying at the beginning, I think. If he saw something in them, didn't matter what anybody said, he could work with them.
So, I mean, coming full circle to this, I was in a pub on Wednesday, and someone asked me if I could play the bass line to Heroes, which I can. And I got on the mic and explained that Bowie was responsible for restoring world peace in Berlin. To finish us off, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need him here now, obviously.
Wouldn't it be great?
Wouldn't it be great? But I mean, the Berlin Wall story is a great one, isn't it?
Well, I tried to steer away from hyperbole in the book, which you can do if you're a bit of a fan and stuff like this. But what swung me over was this. There was a telegram to David Bowie from the German Foreign Ministry, so Angela Merkel's government, said to him at one point, "Thank you for your part in bringing down the Berlin Wall and restoring freedom and unity to our nation." Something with words to that effect, which is really quite amazing. So it was in the late 80s. He's doing a concert. They would back some of these concerts onto the wall, and at some point when he's singing Heroes, he starts hearing, and the crowd on the west side start hearing the east, and they are singing along as well. And then it becomes, you know, because obviously Heroes has a bit about the war and all the rest of it, and it's written in Germany, so it means something. Roughly at this point, the Germans send in their security guards. They've got big dogs. They start pulling people up and trying to pull them away. But the crowd decide the best thing they can do there is sit down and carry on singing. And Bowie realises things are happening, but obviously you can't see. But he describes that moment, hearing the unity of Berlin over him, as the most powerful emotional moment ever in his live career. And he said singing the Heroes that night was less a song and more like a hymn, you know, a prayer, you know, a hymn. And he cried on stage. And it shows you the power of culture and the transcendence, you know, how to unite people. I mean, just such an incredible moment.
And as Madonna did say, music brings people together, and we need him now here. Just to finish off, you're available to do talks on this, some possibly backed up by some idiot that plays guitar. Do you just want to give us a quick 30 seconds about that?
I want to be the idiot on the guitar. Yeah, well...
or two idiots.
Yeah. I'm, you know, I think... I don't quite know what to say to that. I think we should just get together, play some songs and entertain people, talk about Bowie and play some music, yeah.
Yeah, and talk about the transferable lessons from Bowie to life, the universe and everything.
Yeah.
Thank you very, very much, Tom. It's been a brilliant interview.
Thank you.